You know, I've never baked a pie, but I know from watching my wife and my daughters and grandmothers and so forth bake pies that they follow a recipe. They don't just take all the ingredients and throw them into a box or into a pie pan and assume that the pie is going to come out, that they take step one, step two, step three, and step four. And I'd like to suggest to you that wealth transfer and estate planning need to follow the same type of process. In other words, there's a legitimate, logical, rational step one that you take before you go to step two, before you go to step three, before you go to step four, and so forth. And I think that there's 6 steps or 6 decisions or 6 pieces to the recipe that need to be followed in sequence. The first step is to figure out who's going to get it. I need to make the decision as to who's going to get it before I make the decision as to even how much. So it could be my heirs, it could be charity, it could be the government and the attorneys, but I need to decide who's going to get the estate first. Secondly, then, I need to decide, well, how much is each one of these individuals or organizations going to get before I go to the third step, which is the timing question, and that is when. In other words, if I have an estate, I could choose to begin transferring some of that now and avoid the tax consequences later, as opposed to waiting until later. When do I want to transfer this estate? Do I want to do my giving now, or do I want to do my giving later? And then the fourth step is, when I transfer it, do I really transfer the title also? In other words, do I give a gift with no strings attached? Do I transfer my business with no strings attached? Do I transfer whatever assets that it is with no strings attached? Fifth is the tools and the techniques. I know this, that if a client would come to me and say, I want to give to my children this amount, and tell me how much and when they want to give it and what type of asset it is, then I can use the tools and the techniques to figure out the best way for them to do that from a tax efficiency standpoint. What I've found is that most estate planning begins with the tools and techniques, and then it backs into the answer to the rest of the questions. But I submit to you that the tools and the techniques should only occur after you've gone through steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 first. And then lastly, and perhaps not only lastly, but on an ongoing basis, is the 6th step, and that's the talk step. And that is the communicating the why, the who, the how much, the when, and the what to the beneficiaries. Judy and I, not long ago, had a family conference, and we said to our 5 children and the sons-in-laws and the daughters-in-laws, this is what we're planning to do with our estate, this is why we're planning to do it, and we're able to begin a dialogue of telling them what it was that we were going to do. We didn't tell them amounts, we didn't need to do that, but what we did want them to know is why we had made the decisions that we had made. But it began, first of all, with the decision, how much are we going to leave to home and when? So my challenge to you is to start right now thinking about, where would I like my estate to go to? And you know, your estate doesn't need to be big to be thinking about to whom it goes to. What about your stuff? That's probably the biggest issue. What about the pictures, the artwork, the furniture, the cars, the heirlooms that you have? Who's going to get that? It's better to begin talking about that now as opposed to letting your heirs fight over it or discuss it or argue over it after your death. I even had one client of mine who talked to their children about it, and they put stickies on the back of all of their pictures and all of their things so that when the time came to distribute all that, it had already been decided. It's better to decide it ahead of time as opposed to afterwards, when there can be misunderstandings and wrong expectations. So begin your wealth transfer planning now by determining who's going to get what and when they're going to get it.